So this first discussion here, we're going to dive into a couple things, boiling mostly, but also filtering syrup quality. We have one more panelist that'll be here any minute, so we'll start out by talking through their operations. We've got a nice panel of experts here in their regions. So pretty spread out, but the way we want to go back and forth this morning is that if you have questions, feel free to ask, and these guys are going to repeat the question and then talk through. But it's really meant to be an open discussion, and we want to get into as many things as we can, and hopefully it drives more questions. So feel free. So anyway, I'm Kevin Lawyer, product line manager here at Leader Evaporator, and I've been here about 10 years, and I have an operation as well. But I'm just going to moderate this morning, so these guys are going to spend most of the time talking. Go ahead, Nick.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Nick Wendel. I'm a dealer for Leader Evaporator in Western New York, out near Buffalo. I've been a Leader dealer for about 17 years. I'm a fourth generation poultry farmer, second generation sugar maker. My dad started about 10 years old with a single tap, and we've grown that now. We're about 5,500 taps. And we had a fairly decent season. I told everybody it was the second worst in a decade, but we still made 4 pounds of syrup per tap. So boil on all Leader equipment and Leader plastic filter press. Love the equipment. It's the best that you can get, in my opinion, and certainly the best that's made in the U.S.
Hi, I'm Steve Sample with Sample Lumber Company. We're a distribution partner for Leader Evaporator in northeastern New York, right next to Lake Champlain. Myself and my family have been selling Leader equipment since I was a little kid, so 40 or 50 years. I've always enjoyed our relationship with Leader, their expertise, and just the quality of the people that you pick up the phone and who you're talking to. I also own Cannon Ridge Maple. We do about 32,000 taps. We had a banner year this year. We were at 5 pounds, which is, for us, it's very good because it started out as a hobby, still considered a hobby. I run a couple lumber yards, and I'm in the commercial glazing business, and so my time stays occupied. But I love making syrup. Like I just heard this gentleman talking about. It's been instilled in me since I was born. So it would be a big hole in the spring if I didn't make maple syrup. So I don't know if I could stand it. We run a Leader propane fired arch. It's a 5x16. We use max flow flue pan, cross flow syrup pan. Very, very happy with it, and I'm really excited to see their new CIP flue plan that the guys have worked hard on. And they put some money in some R&D on a CIP is the acronym for clean in place. So when we're running high sugar content, in these evaporators, we're pushing them hard. We needed a solution to keep the back pan clean and chip free as possible, so we don't have any cataclysmic meltdowns. So we're excited to see that, and we'll probably purchase one of those this year. But that's pretty much Sample Lumber and Cannon Ridge in a nutshell.
So Pete, just talking about your operation, what you've been doing, how long you've been doing it.
Has nothing to do with filtering right now, you're saying?
Just talking about you,
Just
Pete.
introductions.
Started at the beginning, 8 years old, 8 taps. This was my 57th year of making syrup. I have not missed a year. I've got the fever pretty bad, or the disease, so to speak. Presently, we are boiling from 18,000 taps, and we buy sap from another 8,000. In the late 70s, 1979, I opted to make a living sugaring. and I had everybody say that you're gonna fall flat on your face. The only thing that I knew about sugaring was vacuum is insurance policy. Without vacuum, it's very risky. You have years that are like this. With vacuum, it's more. And I went through 3 of the worst years ever in the mid-'80s. And I will tell you, in those 3 years, I was able to get my feet underneath me, get the land payments paid down because of the shortage of crop. And it was a true shortage because not everybody knew about vacuum systems. So that's how quick it can turn around for you. We are presently cooking on a 5x18. It is a max combo with an enhanced steam away. And in front of that, there is a R-row 8 membrane with 2 high bricks units afterwards, so a total of 10 membranes. We like to boil 15%. The steam away bumps it up above 20. Depends on when you check it. 22, 20, and that's the range it usually is running. So the pans that were originally made to boil 2% sap is now seeing sap is 20%. That's why the CIP units that you saw yesterday or today are being developed, because we are hammering on things and it has to be kept clean. And the deeper the flues, the easier it is to burn them up, so it's even more important. We're taxing equipment 10 times what it was designed for. And they aren't going to hold up. They won't hold up. I have a leaky flue pan right now. As we speak, it started leaking during the season. So it's got to be replaced. So I'm seriously looking at that clean in place, trying to find all the negatives about it. In a sugar house that's not heated, what happens if water gets caught somewhere? How much of an issue is it for somebody that doesn't have a heated sugar house to prevent it from freezing? Motors, pumps, pipes. I'm always looking for the negative in something. I've got a couple days to make that decision.
Where are you located?
I'm sorry?
Where are you located?
I'm 1 hour south of here, about 10 minutes below Burlington. I'm in the southeast corner of Chittenden County. And if nobody knows about Vermont, there's Chittenden County and then there's Vermont. So I am stuck right in the corner of the most populous county. I also have a Christmas tree farm, which works out great because the population, I'm within reach. They can be at my place from the most populated county to the farm to buy a Christmas tree, and we sell them cotton candy and really push the retail end, the candies, the cotton candy. We price it accordingly for a family.
Oh,
So you got a one price, one cotton candy cost, and then you got 3 for. Well, you got 2 kids. Mommy, I want one. Daddy, I want one. And then mom and dad want one. So we try to price things that are enticing to kids in that part of it. But it is very busy. I see a question.
What is your name and
Oh, I'm sorry.
your business?
The last I knew it was Peter Purinton, and like I said, 50 minutes south of here. I've been involved with Leader since 1990. I worked a couple of years with a Brand X across the border and had quite a few issues with the pricing. I worked to price a piece of equipment out, and the customer that I would price it out would go to the Canadian company and they could buy it cheaper than I could, and I was the dealer. So it fell apart very fast. We had a few discussions about that, and now I guess I don't want to sell equipment for you. It's about all I got to say.
That's
Ken.
totally fine. So just so we can kind of gauge the room, by show of hands, who is currently boiling? Who's currently making syrup?
this week go up.
Not actually using an evaporator, or someone not, as far as new people versus people making, how about an RO machine? How about wood-fired evaporator? Oil?
A lot of hands.
So less oil, okay. You guys don't count. They're with him, so they don't count. Okay, it's steam, anybody with steam? There you go.
Where's Glenn?
That's not, yeah. Okay, it's good to know that. So, I heard CIP a couple times, but, I think it's good to just talk about RO machines and, the experience from anyone that started either with raw sat and then went into an RO, and then from an RO potentially to Hybrix if you went there, and, feel free to take it away, anybody. Nick, go ahead.
I'll start that with that one. So I mentioned that my dad started with the single tap and grew that a lot before I even came around, of course. I remember very fondly when he bought his first RO. We boiled raw sap for years. Spent a lot of time in front of the evaporator. And we've always been oil fired, so that was certainly a cost. Back when fuel was 50, 60 cents a gallon, didn't bother as much. Fuel started creeping up, we started adding taps. It was at the time when I was becoming more able that we were adding a lot of taps and needed more ability. Didn't have room in our sugar house for a bigger evaporator. We had a 3x13 evaporator, and if there was our panel here all in the sugar house, somebody was sitting too close to the evaporator. So I didn't have room for a bigger rig, couldn't go taller, couldn't go wider, couldn't go longer. But an RO only took up about 4 square feet, 6 square feet on the floor. So we put an RO in. And I'll admit for the first couple years it was a little hairy. There was actually some problems with the machine. It came from another company. It was before I was a dealer, mind you. It came from a Canadian company. We had some issues with it. And for lack of a better word, we were scared to death of it. And afraid we were going to hurt something, blow something up. Finally got it figured out, the problems with it. I spent a night just following hoses. They're extremely simple machines, folks. We're not reinventing the wheel here. We're not changing sap. We're not changing syrup. We're just removing the extra water. There's a filter on that machine called a membrane, if you're not familiar with it, that all it does is remove pure water. We're leaving behind all the sugars, of course, that's the goal. Vitamins, minerals, bacteria, everything else that makes syrup stays in that syrup. And I can't say we've made the jump to Hybrix. We've used that machine. We used that machine for 8 or 10 years. We've jumped now. I have an HC3. It was an HC2. I added another membrane to it from the Leader Extreme line. I'm not necessarily ROing to a super high concentrate. I'm looking for a large volume of sap, a large volume of water out of the sap. I normally concentrate in a range between 7 and 12%, and a lot of that dictates just by the size of the run. I'm not a fan of storing concentrate, so I may RO for an hour or two ahead and start the evaporator. And if I have 2% sap, for me is rare, I'll have 11 or 12% concentrate. More commonly for me, I have a lot of 1.3, 1.6. I'm in that 7 to 9 range most of the time. A lot of people worry about concentrate level, and some people need to. But for me, that's not important. I know that with my evaporator ROing to that level, at the end of the year, this year I made 2,000 gallons of syrup, and we were right at about 1,800 gallons of oil. A lot of oil, but if I can't justify the cost of 1 gallon of fuel to make a gallon of maple syrup, that's a huge, that's a little tougher. I don't think you should be making syrup if you can't do it with 1 gallon of fuel. So if I wanted to cut my fuel, I could go higher, but I'm happy with 1 gallon of fuel myself. Without the RO, I'd be closer to 4 or 5 gallons of fuel to make a gallon of syrup. That's a big cost.
Is that a single pass?
Single pass, yes. Everything that I'm doing right now with that machine is a single pass. Yep. That may change next year. I'm replumbing tanks and having the ability to the double pass. And I may be talking to you next year about higher concentrate. But like Pete said, I'm also running I didn't explain everything, but I did say Leader equipment. 4x16 evaporator, max pans, enhanced steam away. When I'm putting 10% into my steam away, I'm getting close to 15 or so out of the steam away. So I'm hitting the flue pan at 15, which I'm using my steam away to be high bricks basically. Easier to clean, sometimes easier to maintain. Pete worried about things freezing in the sugar house. An RO, you gotta worry about that freezing. A steam away, I drain it out every night. So,
So if you only had the ability to do one, I guess you answered the question, you'd do a steam away, because that's what you did.
a steam away, there's pluses and minuses to both of them. So my opinion, a steam away is gonna gain you 50% on top of your boiling, 50-60% on top of your boiling capacity. So say you're boiling 100 gallons an hour, you'd be 155, 160, depending on exact numbers. And it only works while you're boiling, where an RO can potentially remove 70, 80% of the water, and you don't have to be boiling to let it do its job. You can RO ahead. You can go get a load of sap, start the RO, go get another load of sap. I haul everything in my sugar house, by the way, too. I'm not one of these lucky people that everything runs right to the sugar house. So that's a factor, is, you know, I gotta be able to haul and then process right now. Sap starts running in the morning, I can't start processing first thing. But, RO is a larger gain, but certainly more maintenance. The steam away, you hose it out. There's a blower to worry about. You know, ROs, you got multiple pumps, soap, acid, worrying about freezing, stuff like that.
And so what's the true work of each? I mean, when you're done at the end of the day?
Maintenance-wise, a steam away is simple. I guess that's, you know, easily. An RO is gonna need rinses. You need another tank for permeate. Potentially need another tank for concentrate, or an intermediate tank if you're multiple passing. But the gain is higher. You know, I wouldn't say there's more risk, but there's certainly more cost, but you can potentially remove water at any time of the day, and a higher volume of water with the RO. So, bigger fuel savings.
Doesn't change the flavor.
I'm sorry?
Doesn't change the flavor.
Everybody's got different theory on this, of course. My father and I, we've tried higher concentrate. For us on our evaporator, about 15%, I notice a lighter color and a little lighter flavor. I wouldn't say it was bad, by no means. But anything, if I'm boiling raw sap all the way to 14, zero difference. With the exception of, I will say that a lot of times people will make lighter syrup with an RO, but it's not because they're not boiling it as much. It's because their process is faster. So if you've got sap that's sitting around, you know, oh, we didn't get everything done yesterday. I still got sap from yesterday. I didn't get the tanks washed out because I didn't get them empty. That will make darker syrup. So if you're processing everything today that came in today, you're washing your tanks, everything's cleaned up and good, and we start tomorrow fresh, that will make lighter syrup all by itself. The RO might be the enabler that allows you to wash tanks, that allows you not to have sap that's 3 or 4 days old because the tanks never got empty. So a lot of people make lighter syrup because of ROs, but it has nothing to do with the fact that they're boiling it in a shorter period of time. It's because they're getting it done in a day and cleaned up in a day. And that is gonna be better quality. Nothing to do with color or flavor. Cleaning tanks and getting things cleaned up will be a higher quality of syrup, regardless of color or flavor. So, I took too much time, I'm sure. I'm sorry, guys. I got carried away.
Question, yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
You had said before about an evaporator not losing the enzymes and all the nutrients in maple syrup. Is that a better retention of these things through an RO versus boiling all the way through?
So you're talking like, you know, minerals and stuff like that? I guess.
You're saying the RO did not take out.
No, I
Yeah.
understand that.
So
but
either way,
is
it's
the
all in the,
converse
it's,
true that therefore boiling will take out more than RO?
you're not removing anything anywhere. It's always gonna be in the syrup, no
Okay.
matter what.
All right, so no matter which way you go, you're not
Right.
altering the.
And one thing to understand regardless, and some people, well, I guess it is possible, but the maple syrup has to be boiled one way or the other. Boiling is a part of our process no matter any way you do it. The RO is a step.
Right.
optional.
Cuts it down tremendously.
You know.
I'm brand new,
Mhm.
and I have to say, I'm not doing maple, I'm doing birch. So,
Okay,
But the process is the
very
same,
similar,
so,
very similar.
yes,
Yep, similar product, but different product.
yes.
But I, used correctly, they're all amazing tools. And, you know, at the end of the day, I mean, and Pete made a comment about, you know, a lot more material. I've had customers that have gone from no RO to an RO and cleaned their pans, you know, every 200 gallons of syrup. Well, now all of a sudden they're making, you know, that used to be 2 weeks. Now they're making 200 gallons of syrup in 2 days. I gotta clean my pans every 2 days. You've made 200 gallons of syrup. So when you talk about minerals and stuff like that on the pans, it isn't time boiling. It's syrup across the pans.
Exposure.
It's production, you know. So it's certainly something to think about, that just because you got an RO and you're going faster, your cleaning might be accelerated also. But at the end of the day, you've got more time to do it because you're boiling. So.
You had talked about, Steve, about going to high bricks.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about going from that medium level to the high bricks level from where you are.
Yeah, we've been experimenting with double pass for a bit, and I'm convinced. Yeah, we do a lot with time management also, so every hour counts, you know, on a higher production. Every hour counts, no matter if we're awake or we're asleep. So we do have to sleep once in a while. No, we don't get too much sleep during the sugaring season, but in my opinion, on the double pass, you know, we RO, you know, 2% to the sweet spot we found was 9%. So we have the tank capacity to do it. So literally, we have a 20,000 gallon in-ground tank, and, you know, we'll fill that up every day. So we had some just nice, easy runs this year. You know, so that's about a three quarter of gallon run per day. And we actually do that processes when we're sleeping. So it's nice to come in and leave the sugar house at 9 o'clock in the evening, set the RO. You come get there at 6 o'clock in the morning, and you have, you know, 9% ready to start boiling right off, and then the process starts again, and filling up the big tank, and we'll boil it out. Stays fresh. And like Nick said, he's doing some plumbing on 2 ROs. We run an HC6, which I've had for a while. It's a 6 membrane. We just bought a new liter RO. We put it in this year, so we have them plumbed to where we can go from 2%, run both ROs, jump it in at 9 as quick as possible, or the minute we get to the sugar house in the morning, we have this 9% to start boiling, so we'll start going from 9% to 20. We feed our steam away at 20, 18 and a half to 20. 20's pushing it, 18 and a half is more manageable. But you know, as soon as we get the sugar house, we'll start ROing and from 9 to 20, and that allows us to get out and get everything ready until we get about 300 or 400 gallons of concentrate, and we're boiling the whole time. You know, we're bringing in sap, so I'm a big proponent of double pass, you know, and I'm a huge proponent of our ROs.
How did you get from 9 to 20?
9 to 20, we have 2 tanks, so if we go from raw to 9, and then we'll go from 9 to 20.
Through the RO again.
To the RO.
Second pass.
Yeah, second pass.
Steve, can you, I guess, what was your experience boiling 9% to boiling 20%? Easier,
Yeah.
less stressful, more stressful?
Well, I come from, it's stressful.
A lot of syrup coming off all at once.
It's stressful. It's, you know, I come from an era, we had 12,000 buckets when I was a kid. And, I still think that's why I'm so mean. And we used to boil, we used to boil raw sap, you know, at 12,000 buckets rolling. We had 2 6 by 16 King evaporators. One was a wood, one was oil. And, you know, so I boiled raw sap, we boiled, my dad bought an RO before I built a new sugar house. And we used to RO down to 8, and it was an amazing, transformation just from raw to 8. Just the amount of sugar wood we used to have to cut. You know, we used to have to cut 80 cords of 4-foot sugar wood. That was worse than sugaring. And,
There's
but,
some gathering sap.
yeah, so, you know, we actually saved 75% of our sugar wood, and we were amazed, so. Yeah, and time management, these new machines will take it, the CIP will bring it to the next level, so, you know, I'm very comfortable at blowing 20% going into the steam away. I just have more time to clean. You know,
Go ahead.
How many hours of running your RO, or how many gallons before you're cleaning it, run it through a clean cycle?
So how many gallons before you clean?
it depends on sap quality.
There you go.
Yeah, it's, the sap quality, just, if you monitor your flows, you know, learn about your flows, you can monitor these things, and they're very predictable. You know, the beginning of the year, the sap is nice and clear, and you can run them, you just keep running them. A quick rinse, start right back up depending on time, or not even a soap wash, just a hot water wash.
We use a micro too, and we're doing like 900 taps. And we have to multi-pass it like you're doing, but I mean, we can't run it for 6 hours, and we gotta clean it, or you can't get any pressure on it. You can tell it's getting dirty. You know, you just can't get it.
So I would think a lot of that has to do with the capability of a machine when it comes to recirculation. So when you're talking about like an HC6 or an HC2, those membranes are equipped with standalone high flow recirculation pumps, and that's what allows you to run for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and see very little slow in production. A Micro 1 does not have standalone recirculation pump. There's recirculation in that machine, but it's not that standalone, you know, positive recirculation.
Doesn't
So,
really seem like it's, I mean, I think it's only rated for like 500 taps or something, so we're almost doubling its
yeah.
capacity. It's time for something bigger, but.
Just periodic
We're gonna
rinses.
Double pass or triple pass to try to get it up to 10 or 12%, and that's, it just isn't gonna get any
Yeah.
better.
They're really beyond the capability of that machine. It'll do it. There's a lot of people that are. But it's just gonna require a little more periodic rinsing.
Takes a lot of washing and a lot of hours of running.
It takes a lot more pressure to prep, once you get, the higher you get in the bricks, you know,
Yeah.
we notice that when they're side by side. You know, your flows really go down, and,
yeah.
and the pressures go down. It takes a lot more pressure to push that
Yeah.
sweeter sap to
Get
your
down
membranes than raw
below
sap.
a gallon
Oh, yeah.
on the gauge. I mean, it's barely, you're afraid of nothing's going through. Oh crap, am I passing sugar, or what's going on, you know, but it's just too heavy.
It's just too heavy. It's, you're making progress. It's just not from your first
Sometimes
pass
we
on.
can't stay ahead of the evaporator.
Yeah.
You know, we'll make 190 gallon, that will be evaporating, and then all of a sudden, holy crap, we've only got, you know, less than 30 gallons of concentrate.
The good news is I know 3 people that could take that and trade
Yeah, no,
and get you in a higher pressure unit that'll do what you're trying to do.
yeah.
And I'm serious. That's the biggest mistake people make when they're buying an RO. They listen to what this machine is designed for. It's never big enough because performance drops off.
Well, our problem was, is we started out thinking we were gonna do like 500 taps, and then we found another 500, and we're like,
Yep.
no.
Oh, yeah. Because you're
We can't
not
do
boiling
that.
enough, you're twiddling your thumbs. So you go tap more
You
trees.
said the disease, you can't stop.
Yep.
So if you talk to one of us, you should size what you think you're gonna buy in the next 3 years for taps.
It's the best money you'll ever spend in sugaring, even though it is expensive. I want to blab my mouth a little bit about RO because I was one of the first ones in the state of Vermont to have one. It's 1980. The price of fuel has gone from 18 cents, 20 cents a gallon, to 70 cents a gallon.
Well, I would love some of that 70 cents a gallon
Yeah.
a day.
Yeah. Okay, but at the time it was shell shock. 2 oil-fired evaporators. This is what I purchased from the previous owner. 50 gallons of oil an hour. They're producing 10 gallons of syrup an hour. so you can see the ratio. The next year, I introduced an RO, took out one evaporator. Started learning a lot about ROs that there was no book that you could read. I called the company when it started fouling, performance dropping off. What do I use to clean it? God, we don't know. We only manufacture them for the milk industry. This is what we use, we'll send you some. Well, of course, it's expensive and you had to pay to ship it and all that stuff. Shot in the dark. Well, it didn't work. What worked the best on that particular machine was Clorox.
Don't do that in any other machine.
No other machine. This machine was chlorine tolerant membranes, let it recirculate, heat up, and rinse it out. And the performance came back. I tried all of their soaps and cleaners that they recommended, and there was no performance gain because we're dealing with something different. It's not what's in milk. It varies from day to day. You can't, to give you an idea, I was at the fellow that actually designed the SpringTech ROs that Leader used to sell. He says you shouldn't process sap that you wouldn't drink. My comment was, I drink pretty dirty water now. Because when you first get one, you want to protect those membranes. And you're so scared of damaging the membrane. The first time I used one, I brought a TV to the sugar house, plugged it in, I watched Mission Impossible. Probably some of you people remember that. A couple of other shows, run out of sap, the machine shuts off. It did what they told me to do. And in my mind, you cannot take water out of a mud puddle, clear water. But that's exactly what it did. It separated water molecules from the sugars. So when you spill dirt in a little pool of water, it gets cloudy. An RO would clear it up on one leg. So the change with the osmosis machine, it brought the fuel usage down to a little over a gallon, and that was running 8%. So gallon, 0.2 in 1982. Price of fuel went up even more. But it was the best money I ever spent. People around me were stopping to see what this front pan is doing. The whole front pan's got syrup in it, and it's the talk of the town. And nobody really wanted to spend the money. But for 3 years, I had an advantage because I was producing syrup at a much lower cost than my competitors. So that technology was fantastic for 3 or 4 years. And then everybody did it.
What was your return on investment? How
$26,000 for a machine, it would do 600 gallons per hour.
Okay, and how long did it take you to recoup that?
I'm sorry?
How long did it take you to recoup
In fuel savings.
Well, I was saving 4 gallons per gallon of syrup. Yeah, 4 gallons of oil, less usage per gallon of syrup. At the time, I was making 2,000 to 3,000 gallons in that range. So 4 gallons at $1 a gallon
Yeah. So you,
would be a fair
Couple
equation.
couple years. But keep in mind that even today, that machine wouldn't cost $26,000.
No way.
The technology has gotten cheaper compared to
12.
the early '80s, and
I was just curious. As
and
to-
fuel went way up, so it's even
Yep.
more efficient today than it was back then.
And it wasn't, you can't base it on just fuel savings. Because, like I said, I was working with vacuum. I knew what vacuum would do to a production, from my production. With an RO, I could start the RO and go out and work in the woods. And I could find the leaks that were costing me money and come back and have a sandwich and start boiling. It just knitted right together.
Return on investment on an RO is definitely fuel minded, but it's all time. And everybody's time is worth differently.
Yep.
Ask somebody that cuts firewood. Somebody that sells firewood versus burns firewood. Their time's worth completely different.
Work in the sugar house is different with an RO in that you spend more time cleaning. One of the drawbacks of an RO, I told you earlier, I'm always the devil looking for what's hiding. You're gonna have to buy a bigger filter press. I'll guarantee it, you're gonna make syrup 4 times as fast Picture yourself with a cone hat filtering 2 gallons, 3 gallons an hour. And then picture yourself trying to do that with 4 times the amount of syrup. You might as well buy the filter press and have it over with because you're gonna need it. I would like to make something about lighter syrup, ROs. If you have an evaporator, it's a 3x10. I'm just gonna grab figures. It evaporates 100 gallons per hour. Makes 3 gallons of syrup an hour. So of that 100 gallons, 97 of it is evaporation. Understood? Feed it 10% sugar instead of 2%. It is 5 times sweeter. So instead of 3 gallons an hour, I'm gonna draw 15 gallons an hour. How much faster does that evaporator evaporate inside? It still evaporates 97 gallons per hour, plus the extra draw off. So how much faster is it actually traveling? I will admit, in the finish line, it's going 4 times faster. But the actual time, if you could do it, a drop of, say, red food coloring, and watch it go through, I don't think it comes out 4 times as fast, like a lot of people say. Lighter syrup, it's because you're working with better sap. I will tell you something that we do that a lot of people might not think about. We always get rid of the afternoon sap before we process the morning sap or last night's sap, because that's cold. Get the warm sap processed. 6 o'clock, you've caught up to cold sap, so you work on your cold sap. And we clean it out, clean the tanks. Store and concentrate, I heard that one brought up. I've done it many times. Dairy farm boy, stick your finger in it. If it's cold, it'll keep. If it's warm, it's going to go bad on you. So if it's 50 degrees, don't even try to store it but at 40 degrees or less, I've stored concentrate for a week, but it was cold when it went in, and it went into a clean tank. And I was busy still tapping trees, so assess what you're trying to do. You don't want to store warm milk.
I want to ask about a wash cycle. Do you guys preheat your DI water and you start your wash, like maybe start at like, let's say 80 degrees compared to just taking, DI water just sitting out in a tank, it's at maybe 40 degrees. And, of course, it's a shorter cycle in your wash because you reach the temperature. Is there a preferred temperature to start with, or?
So the key when you're washing an RO, the key is temperature. At 110, 115 degrees, that membrane is going to expand and release the dirts and stuff that's in there.
Yep.
So the key is to hit that temperature and to do it in a timely manner. Now, I think any of the machines that we're operating here, we can start with 50-degree permeate, and 45 minutes to an hour later, the machine shuts itself off at 115. So some machines won't do that, though. Some machines will not make that heat. But the important thing is that 110, 112, depend on the machine.
Yeah.
But, depend on the membrane exactly. And some turn off at different numbers, but that 110, 115 range, that's the important goal.
So you're saying it's fine to heat up the water? And
If you got to start with warm water to get there, then start with warm water to get there.
Yeah.
But I think it's important that you're using permeate.
Oh, yeah.
Not going to the hot water tank in the house and getting hot water to dump in there because it's well water or worse, chlorinated town water or something like that.
I just know my cycles are very long with just DI water that's outside in cool weather. It takes, 5-6 hours to get there.
Yeah.
Whether people talk about warming, some of their DI up, getting it there, but so the crucial thing is getting up to that, 112, 115 temperature.
Yep. And then, in my opinion, and I think we're all gonna feel here, immediately after you hit that 115, rinse. There's some of the competition says, it takes us 4 hours to our machine, just go home. But the machine will turn itself off. Well, that's like you guys washing dishes in your sink, hand washing dishes, and then stacking them up in the dirty water and leaving them in the dirty water. You come back the next day, pull that dish out, it's still dirty. Immediately when you get done washing your dishes, you rinse them off. Same thing with the RO membranes. You follow up a hot water wash or a soap wash, it gets done, you rinse immediately. No membrane life and health will be far better that way.
One of the nice things about RROs now is back in the 80s, an 8-inch membrane was $3,200. You can buy them over the internet or through Leader or through H2O. The range is going to be from $600 to $900, depending on which brand. Well, that makes a difference when you're looking at the membrane saying, I got to save that membrane. Well, the price is, you can buy 4 of them for the price of what they were 30 years ago. It's not the issue anymore. So you bought them to use them. You will find that out. And if you abuse them, you have to replace the membranes, so be it. That machine is paid for itself in electricity. I shouldn't say savings of electricity, but for the work you got, for what the amount of electricity that you use, it's unbelievable.
How long do your filters last?
I'm sorry.
Membranes?
Yes,
Membrane filters?
yes.
Personally, I would say I've never replaced them because they were, say, passing sugar. I've replaced them simply because there was a better option, faster option, not because they were broken. But I've gotten anywhere from 5 to 10 years, I would say, average lifespan, personally myself.
What about you, sir?
3 to 5 years, you can afford to change them.
3 to 5, we push them hard, so.
And again, probably not because they're passing sugar, just because it's, you know what, let's replace them, we get better flow rates,
Yeah.
faster, more efficient. more efficient.
Realize a
Efficiency.
bottleneck. It's not doing what it used to do, and, well, now you're waiting for it to make enough so that you can boil it, and it's just not doing what it used to do. And
You're saying you're replacing them because they're uncleanable?
they're uncleanable, performance, it doesn't stay up. You can wash them, boing, they permeate, but they die off. They just have that characteristic
Don't
of
get as
a,
clean as new.
yeah, correct. And they don't stay clean as long, they drop off
Clog up.
quicker. And when they get to that point, that's where the bottleneck that I'm talking about. Yeah, everything else is fine, the pumps are fine, everything is just not passing sugar. Permeability is not what they were.
So, can I assume that all 3 of you are running steamways as well?
In fact, yes.
Enhanced steam ways.
Can we switch over to that a little bit?
Mhm.
Talk about those, maintenance. How much real advantage is there in having sap go into the flue pan at 150 degrees or 180 degrees or 100 degrees as opposed to 40 degrees?
So that difference, that's the same difference that you're gonna see. As far as hitting the flue pan at a temperature, a preheater can do that for you. And you're gonna gain 10 or 15% boiling rate, is that a safe number, Kevin?
Yeah.
With a preheater. But that is simply just hitting the flue pan, where your flue pan is not now having to heat the water up or sap up, it's just boiling immediately in that corner. So that's the gain you're seeing there. The real gain with the steam away, though, is you are effectively removing water on that upper pan.
Yeah.
You know, those of you that don't know, a steam away is a heat exchanger. There's examples out on the floor that we can look at. It's all stainless steel, completely 100%. There is a pan of sap, if you will, above our flue pan. That pan is heated from the bottom and then also through stainless steel pipes that act as a heat exchanger. So we're pushing steam through stainless pipes and also the bottom surface of that pan, effectively heating the sap to 195, 210 degrees, depending on the rig. The secret, though, is that that temperature sap won't always evaporate. You have an air blower that percolates that sap. So we've all had a cup of coffee in front of us. Some of you might right now. That cup of coffee won't steam. If you blow on it, you break the surface tension, it will steam. Same concept. So when you have a steam away and you're breaking that surface tension with those air bubbles, it steams. And it's pretty incredible to take, in my case, an evaporator that will boil about 280 gallons an hour with just the pans. And for a little extra height and a 1-horse blower, I'm well over 440 gallons an hour. With no extra fuel. I'm not putting more fuel in the burners. I'm not throwing more firewood. At the end of the night, we hose it down just to get any sediment in it out. Now I'm lucky. I have unlucky on some aspects. This is a blessing in disguise. The devil that Pete's always looking for. I have a heated sugar house. So me, every night that I get done, when we get done boiling, we drain the steam away empty. There's no sugar, there's no sap in the steam away. But I fill it full of permeate water every night. That accelerates my end of year cleaning excessively. If that steam away sits and dries out every night, it's gonna be harder to clean. Letting mine sit full in a heated sugar house, and I drain it out the next morning, or the next time right before I start boiling, I drain it out, put sap in, and we boil. For maintenance wise, that's the extent of my maintenance. I hose it down at the end of the night, I fill it full of water, and I'm good to go.
Yeah.
My heated sugar house though has become a problem. Pans that, Pete's pans, he gets done boiling at 9, 10 o'clock at night, and the next morning, depending on nighttime temperatures of course, but normal typical sugar house, it's gonna freeze that night. The pans are maybe lukewarm the next morning, if you're lucky. My pans, I get done boiling same time, they're warm, they're hot. And end of year sap, we've lost way too much sap in that flue pan. Now for me, we built our own before it was available from Leader. We have a clean in place system on our flue pan. So every night when I shut down, we hose the steam way out, get all that sap down, fill that up with water, let the rig cool down for a few minutes. All my flue pan sap goes in a tank, and it goes either in my warehouse, which is unheated, or I have a walk-in cooler. So that flue pan sap is now cold, and we wash our flue pan. It's a system I built myself. It's a little different than what Leader has here, but it's the same idea. And that was the heated sugar house. That was a problem because you're trying to wash a giant booger out after you didn't boil for 2 days at the end of the season. It's a lot of law, and the worst part is that's all sugar that turned that way from bacteria, and that could have been 10 gallons of syrup or half a barrel of syrup. And I'm putting it down the drain, and it may not even flow through the drains. It's
Right.
that bad.
How much, obviously, depending on the size, how much sap is in that steam away?
You got 70, I think mine's 75 gallons.
Yeah, it isn't a ridiculous amount.
75 gallons.
75 gallons on a, what, 5 by 8?
5 by 10.
It's 5 by 10 steam away.
5 by 10, yeah.
So
Yeah, I'm just thinking probably. I don't even know. I've never really measured mine, but I would. Yeah,
We've got a
50, 60
ratio for
gallons
those,
in mine.
Depending on the size. Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry, I'll let you go in just a minute. We're boiling on a 2 by 6, and it's an old grim, old. We got a Max flue pan and a Revolution pan in the front. We founded up a blower and a little preheater, and we went from 28 gallons an hour to 35.
That's that 10-15% that I told you about.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
you could take that 28-30 you were at and make it 45-50 with a steam oil.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, everybody used to complain about the steam aways, hard to clean or deep clean, but is it that they've changed the design to make them easier to clean, or is it everybody's draining them every night, putting their condensate in it?
I don't know. I mean, for me, the flue pan washer made a huge difference. That's the reason we did it. Is that the steam aways can make, and it depends on your sugar house. I mean, I've been to sugar houses that are set up with pulleys and winches, and you've got the height in the ceiling. You pick the steam away up 3-4 feet. You wash your flue pan with a pressure washer. It's easy, simple.
I'm talking
Not everybody
about-
has
I'm
that
not talking
option
about the flue can, but the steam away.
Washing.
People used to complain about the steam aways, they get dirty and they couldn't keep it clean. And I know they've changed some of the designs to make that better, but is the whole problem back 5, 8 years ago? Was it that they weren't draining
The copper preheaters, when the steamaways had a copper pipe in them, they were much harder. I never had one of them. I don't know if you guys did, but they were a lot harder to clean.
I think Leader changed the,
Oh, you're talking about the air
hole,
pipes.
the actual hole, the air pipes from round to slots, so the, sugar wouldn't build up on it. I believe that's what they did on the enhanced.
They also have the ability now, if you look at a steamaway, there's a manifold on them. So what I misunderstood, I apologize. I was thinking about just cleaning, but there was an air problem where the air pipes were starting to sugar up and we're letting air out. So the new way, yes, you can clean those air pipes much easier. The manifold is exposed. You can take a couple caps right off the front. You can run a brush down them tubes and clean the air pipes. So yes, absolutely.
And if you clean those air pipes when they're damp, it's real easy. You know, just drain it down. As soon as you drain it down, run your brush through them. You know, we put one on the end of a drill and they clean up nice. Very low maintenance piece of machinery.
Most of the people that are having trouble are boiling concentrate. They aren't
High
boiling raw
concentrate.
sap.
I've never had a problem with mine at what I'm gonna consider lower concentrate, you know, that 8 to 10 number,
Yeah.
if you will. I don't have no problem, never had to clean my air pipes, never once.
And do we agree the steamway's always empty when you're done boiling?
Always.
You always
We
empty
boil
it.
it right out.
You always
Because-
what?
It's always empty when we get done boiling.
There's not extra sap sitting in your rig at the end of the day.
No.
The steamaway is your shutdown liquid, part of.
Yeah.
On an oil-fired rig myself with no fire brick or anything, no residual heat in the arch, I turn the switch off after the steamaways run empty.
Yeah.
On a wood-fired rig, it might be when your head tank runs empty and there's still sap in the steamaway, that's when you stop firing. That, what's in your steamaway is going to allow the rig to cool down.
Yeah.
But at the end of the night, you're done boiling when that's empty.
There's one more advantage to a steamaway that is the hot water. There's an abundance of 195-degree water, and there is a value on it. And I don't know what it is, but it is a high value once you've used it to melt ice or cut some syrup that got spilled or clean something. You
Yeah,
just,
just cleaning.
Washing
You're always
barrels.
washing something off.
yeah.
Yep.
And to give you an idea, a 5x10 would 5 to 6 gallons an hour. I mean, a minute.
A minute.
Yeah.
That's a lot of hot water.
That's a lot of hot water.
And keep in mind, in some cases, if your drains in your sugar house are, black corrugated perforated pipe that you ran out, you'll melt them. Anything less than Schedule 40 PVC, you'll collapse that pipe because it's a relentless 5 gallons a minute of 200-degree water. Once you filled your tank, I'm going to keep 100 gallons, that's great. What do you do with the other
Overflow.
couple thousand, on a bigger rig, 1,000 gallons of hot water every day? What do you do with it?
That's technically distilled water, right?
Yes.
It is.
You can bottle it.
I was just gonna say, nobody's marketed that, I mean, it's distilled water.
Technically, you could, they still do a bunch in Ohio.
There's a few that have.
There have few that have. There's a lot of that permeate water there, condensate water that's bottled in glass in Ohio and sold that way.
Jim, question?
Just answer it.
Okay. We'll keep going. We're gonna jump around a little bit, but make sure we can leave it open for if you wanna come back to it. Go ahead, Scott.
I got one question. I run a 4x14, non-heated sugar house. Kevin's been in my sugar house. End of the season, like with past 2 weeks, you get warm weather. I myself, I'll run perm water into that rig for 15-20 minutes as I'm boiling, so I don't get that ropey sap. How long, it's 4x14, well, 180 gallon hour. How long do you think that rig should run, if you guys have an idea, to get the temperature where you're not gonna get that ropey sap?
So you're talking about heating the sap up,
No, I'm already boiling.
okay,
Now, I'll run my head tank empty, I'll refill with perm water, run perm water into the rig.
He's chasing it out.
That way that sap's all been boiled at 212 degrees.
I see, so pushing the sugar out of the rig basically.
To a certain point in your rear can. So
Yeah.
you don't, when you get that 50-degree heights, you don't come to your house next day, you take your scoop and you could, the mouse can climb up.
I think that, in my opinion, that's different on every rig. My old rig, I could push the water out of it and You know, of course it was much smaller, but it should be relative. In
Yep.
45 minutes, it felt like.
Yeah. But
Do-
I'll run about 20 minutes.
Do you
Yeah.
chase it out at the end of the season?
What's that?
Do you chase your suite out at the end of the season? How much do you use? There's your answer. There's your answer right there.
I don't think 20 minutes is getting the sweet out.
I'm just getting like the first side of the rear pan heated where it's, you know, up to that temperature, so it's not sitting there. Cause I used to run a liter special with the pan on top, the float box on the top of the pan. And when it was warm overnight, I come in the sure house next night after work, and that whole can was white and real ropey. So that's when I started running firm water to push that clean, and the first two channels of that liter special rear pan, so I wasn't getting that, and I still do that with this set of pans I have now. When
So
it gets to the warm weather.
I'm wondering if you're seeing a difference because you're basically dropping your concentration more so.
That's on the.
And it's changing. I don't know if I can answer. I don't know personally.
Just the thought, when I do that, I eliminate that, I get better quality syrup when we get in the warm weather.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, what I'm.
I think he's not running any preheater, am I correct? No preheater?
No
over there?
preheater, no hood, no.
So he's running cold sap in.
14.
I'll drop my back boxes for that reason. But I'm also running preheater, so it really shouldn't matter. But he's running cold sap and cold concentrate. So if he shut down and didn't push perm water, he would
Yeah.
have cold concentrate that's never been sterilized.
Yep.
sitting
And
in
that's
the back.
and that you're.
Cause I'm running 10%.
And then that's one tip that what you're doing. If it works for you,
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you to keep doing it. But one thing that people can do with that same idea is when you shut wood-fired rigs, especially years ago, I've got 8 inches left in my tank. That's what I need to shut down. If that's what you need to shut down, you should flood that into your pans to get all that sap up to temperature and preferably boiled to sterilize it. Not just let that dribble in, and when that last sap dribbles in, your pans are only 100 degrees, that you're going to end up with a bacteria issue.
That's what I'm getting at. I push it
Yep.
firm through so that rig's boiling.
As long as any sap that's had bacteria in it, you bring it to a boil, I think that's enough time. Yep. That's a good point.
Another question, we have a 3x10 liter Vortex dropable pans, 2016. But, we spent a bunch of money recently between filter presses, and we're toying with an RO or a steam away. We can't do both at once, it'd probably be 2 or 3 years apart. Would you go with a steam away first or the RO first?
So the question was, RO or steam away, he's gonna, what'd you say size was?
3x10 Vortex.
3x10 Vortex.
If you're looking for raw sap, you can 70%. If you're tapping 1,000 taps, you can tap 1,700. With an RO, you can 4 times. If you're tapping 1,000, you can tap 4,000. The effect at the evaporator,
So you're just basing it totally on how many more taps we wanna add?
that's
Exactly.
Or you're going to burn 1/4 of the amount of wood. You're going to be in the sugar house boiling 1/4 of the amount of time with an RO.
So what you're trying to say is the RO is the way to go first?
It's got more bang for the bucks.
Dollar for dollar, yes, but if you're looking to gain 70% on efficiency or time or growth, steam away. If you're looking to gain 300-400%,
Does
steam
your-
away, or RO.
I tease people. Does your neighbor have maples on his land that borders you? If you do, you might want to get an RO, because it is very enticing to talk to your neighbor and say, "Can I tap your trees?" And he had more trees than you had. It's a fever.
I don't know if we could handle going 300 or 400% cutting wood, but you're saying I'd save a lot, burn the same amount of wood probably.
You would burn 70% less wood.
All right.
It's,
Or you're going to boil 70% more sap,
With the
same amount of wood. There's a lot of different ways you can look at it.
Does that answer become different if you have an unheated sugar house?
Correct. You gotta have a heat if you have an RO. You gotta have a room.
You
at
also
least.
have to have, depending on the size of the RO, enough electricity.
A big enough power cord,
You know,
yeah.
if you're running your whole sugar house right now on an extension cord from the neighbors or something like that, an RO might not be an option at all.
Well, see, that's what I mean, if you're in an unheated sugar house, is maybe the steam away is the better choice
A lot
first.
of them
if
just
you're
built
gonna do
a
one or
small
the other.
building inside the sugar house.
It's not hard to build a small room for an RO. It doesn't have to be much bigger than the RO. It makes it harder to work on if it's the same
Yeah.
size as the RO, but it doesn't need to be a big room. And one comment I'd like to make on heated rooms and for sugar houses, or for ROs. A heated room for an RO does not need to be 75 degrees. It needs to be about 55. And it may seem a little on the cool side, but when there's bacteria, there might be a little bacteria somewhere in an RO room or in an RO machine, and you're shut down for 3 days because the whole season's shut down. Snowstorm, 8 feet of snow. Your RO room's sitting at 75 degrees and you've got pre-filters that you didn't change. You've got bacteria growth inside that machine. If that machine's at 50, 55 degrees, way different situation. So everybody's idea of a heated RO room might be different. Heated doesn't mean comfortable in a t-shirt. Heated means above freezing.
Protected from freezing.
Yes. I mean, 40, 45 might be enough. And it doesn't take much to keep a small room, you know, a 3x3, even an 8x10 room above freezing. Good amount of insulation and a small heater is sufficient. So, heated RO room does not mean 8 inches of spray foam and a standalone wood-fired boiler to keep it warm.
Many people with small ROs use 2 light bulbs, separate legs, and they check on them once in a while. If one's out, they replace it. It's a safety. 200-watt bulbs.
Chicken coop, either way.
Yeah. Incandescent bulb, but they run 2 of them in case one of them, because if one goes out, it's going to be when it's below 0.
That's a good point, because today, we used incandescent bulbs in our old RO room for years, heat lamps or whatever. Today, your light bulbs are CFLs or LEDs. They make very little heat. Halogens or incandescent bulbs make heat, and that's what you're looking for. You can still buy them. Just, it's very easy to grab the CFLs or the LEDs, and they're not going to do what you want them to do.
Nope.
Okay, let's get into a little bit different topic. Wood firing technique. I think most people here are using wood fired evaporators, and then how it relates to defoamer use. You guys, Steve, you used to have wood. It sounds like, and Pete, I think you still have wood. Talk a little about that. Best practices in wood firing, and then defoamer use.
Oh, it's been a long time since we ran a wood fire. 25 years.
You can mention that you can talk about defoamer, then that's probably better than defoamer use for you.
Yeah, defoamer use for me, it's a moving target based on sap quality. That changes every day. We use a defoamer, an automatic defoamer injection system right into the steam away. And you gotta watch it. It doesn't take long to recognize it, because when it hits your front pan, you're not putting enough in the into the steam away. But we adjust that, not every day, but as the sap quality changes, usually with temperature, we have to make an adjustment quite often. And we can gauge it on my machine. We can just gauge it how the front pan's reacting. If there's enough defoamer being injected into the steam away or rear pan, then you need very little defoamer in the front. And foam in the front is, when we were boiling raw sap, it didn't have as big a problem. But when your sap's moving at 20 bricks going in, it's moving fast. It's very important to keep the flow, because it will stack up on you, and you'll absorb through 2 or 3 pans. So the amount of defoamer to use it's a learning process. I don't think there's no set minimums or maximums. It's not consistent coming in. You have to adjust and adapt, on the different types of sap. That's the reason we quit boiling this year. The sap was still running pretty good, but I couldn't control the foam, no matter how much defoamer we used. It was unique. It's never happened to me before, but we couldn't use it. We couldn't put enough in it. And it was mixing in the back pan, the front pan, it was running over the dividers. We couldn't control it, so I was tired and I said, no, that's enough. When you can't control your phone, we quit. So it does have an impact on, a big impact on, you know, when we stop boiling.
Pete, how about wood firing technique?
We always make sure and defoam the living daylights out of it, the first boiling. Because I don't know if anybody's ever noticed, the first boiling, it can get out of control and go right over and right down the drain where the steam away water is going. And you know what, there's no profit. It's all gone. So we doctor it up pretty good the first boiling before we even light the match. Once we get through the first boiling, it's as needed. We have a machine oiler on the steam away hood, little hole drilled in, and we adjust it so you get like 4 drops per minute. And you have to put it in the steam away. You can't put it in the float box because it is a U-shaped thing. It'll float on top in your float box. That's not where you want it. It's not doing any good. It's gotta go in the steamway. So just, if you do get a steamway, you gotta use it there. And the rest of the late season, you have to use more. Right to the point where it doesn't even wanna work then. We try to avoid use any, defoamer in the front pan. We try to use enough so that it carries through. And if you start noticing this boiling, mixing in the petitions in the front pan, it's, my dripper's out of defoamer. I mean, there's little cues. It's like riding a bicycle. First couple times, you might skin your knees or something like that, but within an afternoon, you're pedaling and being crazy, running on one tire.
Because you're boiling high concentrate, right?
Yep. But even with raw sap, I think the initial boil over the first time has a lot to do with being concentrated.
You know, we put 2 or 3 drops in the raw side of the
Yep.
pan. 2 or 3 drops in every 6 minutes.
Yep. And that carries,
And
does the job.
It works,
And if it works, you don't need to use any more.
because it goes along with fire. A little bit of wood more often.
I can honestly say from a wood-fired standpoint, I have 0 experience, other than boiling with customers. I've never actually boiled with, but I'd like to talk about just consistency in every aspect of while you're boiling. And a couple of those are very easy. So for instance, sap flow. If we're running an evaporator with a float system, you're gonna keep a very consistent depth in your pan the whole time. That's not a big deal. That one's taken care of for most of us. If you're not, and you're doing it with a valve, that's certainly something to watch. The more consistent you keep your sap depth in your pans, the more consistent you're gonna be. The next one that we have a little control over in some cases is your draw off. When you draw syrup, your thermometer hits 7 or your auto draw opens, you don't necessarily want to take a 1-inch stream off your pan right now. You want to crack that valve in just a nice, slow, steady stream. Ideally, it's hard. Some of these guys with the bigger rigs and the higher concentrate might see it, but the best case would be you're constantly drawing syrup off. It's harder to attain, but if you can get your rig where you're getting longer draws, you draw for 30 seconds, 45 seconds, even a minute or 5 minutes, and taking off a small amount of syrup is better to do. I've seen some hands for oil-fired rigs. Your heat input, you can't get any more consistent than your heat input on an oil-fired rig. So for me, that's easy. That's out the window. Wood-fired rigs, though, keeping that wood input, heat input consistent is important. And some rigs advertise different things, but if a more frequent firing of a small amount of wood will do that for you. And an egg timer or some sort of timer in the sugar house is very important, that when that thing dings, no matter where you're at, you open the doors, you throw 2 or 3 pieces in, and you shut the doors. If you wait 15, 20 minutes, you open the doors, you throw an armful or a wheelbarrow full of wood in there, that's gonna slow your boil down. So recommended practices is, in my opinion, and it depends on your wood. And the best way to do that is either with a timer or watching your stack temperature. When you start to see a decline in your stack temperature, you need to put wood in.
That's too late.
It might be too late, but you start to see a decline. You know where your range is. You hit a range, we're gonna fire. So that would be, in my mind, a recommended practice with wood-fired rigs is possibly more frequently. And most of the time with a wood-fired rig, when it comes to defoaming, wherever your switch is to turn the fans back on, or wherever you lay your gloves, that's where your defoamer bottle should be. Consistency on defoaming is very, very, very important. So when you fire, a couple of drops in the steam away, and again in the steam away, or in your flue pan, that's the time to do it. With me and my oil-fired rig, I don't have to put wood in it. So we have an automatic defoamer also that does it for me. And when I first had an automatic defoamer, I built my first one, and it was unbelievable the difference that we seen on there. It was our old evaporator, but we would get draws every 7 to 10 minutes, and it would draw, for 10 seconds, 30 seconds, we thought we were doing good. Set the automatic defoamer up on the flue pan, and forgot about it, actually. It's doing its thing, keep an eye on it. About 45 minutes to an hour later, all of a sudden, we thought there was something wrong with the auto draw, because it would open and shut, and open and shut, and open and shut. Now, a normal draw for me before was, say for instance, I was drawing at 219. It would hit 219, it would go up to 219.8, 219, maybe 220, and then during the draw, it would go back to 219, stop the draw, and it would drop down to 217. And then it would creep back up over 5 or 8 minutes, get back up to that temperature, open the valve, and I was going a degree over and 3 degrees under. It was normal. It worked. I was fine with it. When I started defoaming consistently, in the way of a couple drips every 5 minutes, I went from where it would go 2/10 over and 2/10 under my set point. 2/10 over, 2/10 under. I was getting a more consistent draw. It made my evaporator more efficient.
I've noticed that we run a stack temperature between 1,000 and 1,100. It never, that's where it runs.
Mm-hmm.
I can hear it before the thermometer drops. Before that thermometer starts going down, you can hear the difference in the water.
Mm-hmm.
It's time for wood, along with the timer. The one thing, and I don't know if you wanna mention this or not, the other thing that I've seen a lot of is guys trying to kick wood into the firebox, cause there's no more room. You're wasting your time.
So my thoughts on that, again, I've very little experience, but fuel in your firebox is not the most important aspect of your firebox. Combustion area in your firebox is important in your firebox. I've got a customer with an Inferno fired evaporator, which is just air under fire, airtight front, airtight, forced air grates, airtight door. He's operating at numbers with that evaporator of a vortex, but he is very, very adamant about leaving about a 4 or 6 inch gap between his top of his wood and the pans, and he's gaining combustion area, giving an area to burn those wood gases more completely. The other thing is on any evaporator, airtight front, fabricated front, cast iron doors. If you keep your wood 6, 8, 10 inches away from your doors, it's going to be that much easier to keep your doors from cracking, from warping, from breaking, from everybody loves glowing doors. Oh, look how hot we are.
Yeah, no.
That's hard on equipment. Just some doors. Move that wood back 4 inches, you're wasting heat out the doors.
A little short of wood.
Yep. So.
Can I ask a RO membrane storage question going back a little bit? My friend's in the other presentation, he just texted me. Do you guys store your membranes like in the off season in the house, somewhere else? We have a heated garage, we have the hobbyist 2 membrane, and when we clean it at the end of the year, there's always a little bit of water stuff in the bottom of the canisters.
Mhm.
What's the best way to
So
store those membranes and keep that junk from?
Membrane storage.
Well, you're on the end, might as well start.
Start with you.
I've stored my membranes right in my RO. You know, I'm fortunate I have heated water, heated sugar house. So I tend to go, you know, wash them. I make some permeate, and once a month I go and clean them, keep them fresh. So in theory, I use my RO 12 months a year. You know, I maintain them that way. It's not a big deal for me. You know, taking them out and storing them, it's just, you know, we have 12 of them, so it'd be a whole nother expense. If they were $3,200 a piece back in the 80s, I'd probably treat them a little better, but, you know, we've had good luck storing them right in the machine, really. That's what we do. It works well for us, and I just run them once a month, every 6 weeks, I'll run them.
It's pretty much ditto for me. Soap wash, acid soak, soap wash, benchmark. Are they clean? As clean as you can get. Well, that's what the competitors give you for a performance report. It's what you're reading on these machines. It's adding the permeate rates and stuff like that. If it's clean, shut it down. The water that's in there is permeate water.
Yeah.
And I do the same thing once a month, once every other month. Turn them on. It makes all your electronic switches open and close. It keeps them from sticking. A lot of times, people will call, my RO won't start. The feed pump starts, a high-pressure pump, tries to come on, shuts right off. Well, it's because there's a switch stuck. And they think, you know, they're in major problem. But any machine that's set for 10 and a half months without use, they run the risk of that switch sticking. So that prevents it by starting them once in a while. It's kind of a pain taking them out of the vessels too.
Yeah, I store my membranes also right in the machine. Some companies don't recommend that, but that's a lot of extra work in my book. And risk of pinched O-rings and gaskets and leaking and stuff like that. If the machine can be left right in, leave them right in. One thing that I'd like to say, now I don't run mine weekly or monthly. I might be able to in the future as an option with the way my tanks are gonna be set up. That might be a better option for me in the future. But in the past, like Pete said, wash or soap wash, rinse, acid rinse, soap rinse, check your benchmark, you can go again. Maybe you want to do a citric acid soak for a few days. That's where mine's sitting right now. As we speak, mine's sitting in citric acid. Just a long-term soak to try to remove some scale. I'll do another rinse, do a soap wash. If it's where I want it to be as far as performance rates, we'll rinse that, rinse up, make sure everything's rinsed clean. Add a preservative to keep bacteria growth. And then one key thing that I do, and I recommend to everybody, is remove your pre-filters. Those pre-filters have bacteria in them. Take them out. Put fresh, clean, dry ones in, and now your machine's ready to sit with preservative in it for the summer. If you have a way to keep permeator water around, that monthly rinse is not a bad option. And again, for exercising pumps, keeping motors active, seals wet, switches doing what they're supposed to be doing. That's all a great option if you have that ability. But if not, preservative is a good way. Just get the pre-filters out. I don't care if all you did was wash and rinse and they're perfectly clean. There's bacteria living in those pre-filters.
How about glycol are you putting glycol in the?
I don't personally, because I have heated. There's reason to run glycol for seal reasons, but I'll admit that I haven't had any problems with seals not running it.
I'm gonna back up a little bit. You were talking about a tank that was full of permeate water. I just use the wash tank. It's full of permeate water, and that's
So
just.
you're recirculating
Just
that.
recirculating. It's like a fake wash with no soap. And it's just, let it run 5-10 minutes.
So you're not storing,
I,
water for a year and using that, your permeated water?
are you?
No.
Did you-
no,
wash
just
tank.
Wash tank.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've heard that some of them have kept water around until the next season,
You can, if your tanks have to be super clean. There's bacteria in your tanks, and you will get, you will get bacteria on top of them.
I did put glycol in mine, and I was advised to really rinse that out, and I thought I could still smell it after doing like 3 soap washes. I don't know, 3 rinses. I wouldn't recommend it.
The industry's steering away from glycol. It's, if you can get away with it, it's
like, anything you put in it, you might have to wash out next spring. And glycol, I'll tell you, this is coming from the guy that designed Spring Tech machines. He said it's kind of like an egg in a carton. It almost goes through. So it creates an issue. If you don't get glycol washed out well before you apply high pressure, that egg in that carton is going to get pushed down in there a little bit deep. Now you've got to use an acid wash to dilute it and get it out.
So it's 10:25, the next one starts at 10:30, so we can answer a few more if you want, just to let you know. Go ahead if you want, we'll come back.
So when you let your RO set for the season, are you putting your solution in for your membranes to set into your wash tank?
And then just recirculating that within the machine, yes.
It's almost like a wash without the soap. You
And
set
you
it-
don't have to go up to temperature either.
Nope.
Just you making sure you're distributing that preservative throughout the entire machine.
And you don't apply pressure.
No pressure.
V18s are open.
And also very important that if you're putting any in, whether it be glycol, whether it be preservative or anything, soap wash before you start up the next year. You have to get whatever chemical, whatever you're putting in there, soap wash to get it out, not just a simple rinse. Soap wash to get it out.
Keep in mind, it's bigger than a water molecule, so it stays on the sugar side of the membrane.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to say back to the wood fires, I know you guys all have a little, but I think we talked to you about this, Kevin, last year, but we were running our vortex and we didn't know we weren't supposed to, but we were 2 years of dried, mixed hardwood and softwood, seasoned for 2 years before we use it. And, we were running stack temperature up to 1,200–1,300 with vortex, and we were using a lot of wood and not making as good a quality of syrup. And, unfortunately, I didn't get to try it this year, so what they suggested, try to keep it under 1,000 and adjusting the airflow, but I hurt my leg and we didn't do it this year, but we actually made worse quality syrup and never made any fancy for 2 years, and we always did with the old evaporator that wasn't forced there.
Okay.
And we had the vortex, and we were running the blowers on high all the time. And we were burning up thermometers, and I hit it with the infrared gun, and it is 1,250, 1,300 degrees in the stack. And we think that was a big mistake.
The other thing is depending on the arch, I mean, and again, very little into it, but your wood almost might be too dry. Sometimes you want a little moisture in that to help become the wood gases that you burn, and
Well,
you might wanna mix not all 3-year seasoned wood, try some 1-year seasoned wood.
We were wood fired up until this year. We went to oil just as the price of oil went up good, so we get a lesson of what
So
I learned.
you're the reason it
What
went
I
up.
learned back
How much
30
you
years ago.
used.
1,200 degree stack temperature. My first thought is your stack is too tall. Shorten your stack a little bit, get the stack temperature down. 900 degrees is really good for wood fired operations.
that's what Kevin and some people told us. 800 to 1,000, fired 800, and adjust
Yep.
your airflow if you're going over 1,000.
If you have the ability, take a length of stack up. You would be surprised what 3 feet of stack will do to your stack temperature.
We're sitting on a hill and it's wide open around us, the wind blows pretty good there, so probably might be getting too much draft.
You are raising the temperature in your firebox by injecting air over and under your fire. And you're getting turbulation and ignition.
Okay,
Very good.
that's it. Thank you very much. This is